We're going to use this model to go over the ventricles, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit. This would be collectively referred to as the brainstem model, more or less, even though we have more than just the brainstem. You can see that here is the pons, which tells you that the medulla oblongata is here, and your midbrain with the cerebral peduncles is over here. I'm hoping that I can point to that properly there. So the more superior portion of this model incorporates parts of the cerebrum, including the basal nuclei. As a matter of fact, if I rotate this a little bit and I peel this away, and give me a second here, and I can't do it, maybe yes, maybe no. There we go. That's an example of a basal nucleus, which is still part of the cerebrum. Now, our goal was to use this model to show you the ventricles, and so I'm going to have to peel away some structures to reveal the ventricles. The ventricles are everything in the blue here. The view you have right now is the anterior view, which you see because of that that pons facing you. So I'm going to peel away all these other structures now and literally just isolate the ventricles. Okay, so I'm going to rotate it now so to where it's a lateral view. So what you're seeing now is one lateral ventricle here, which pretty much follows the shape of one of your cerebral hemispheres. And over here is the other lateral ventricle following the cerebral hemisphere on the other side of your brain, and this is the anterior side of the brain, or the ventricles. I may need to tip this a little bit more so. So this would be the right lateral ventricle, and this is the left lateral ventricle, the right going all the way this way. Now, these two lateral ventricles more anteriorly merge together, and I'm going to tilt this a little bit where you can then see that little duct right there. And I'm going to twist it now this way, or turn it this way, so you have a frontal view. And right here is one of the interventricular foramina, and there is the other one. So there's two of them. This is where the cerebrospinal fluid of both lateral ventricles merge, and then the cerebrospinal fluid can enter into the next ventricle, going back to the lateral view. And that is the ventricle with the hole in it right here. So this is your third ventricle right there. It has a hole for the intermediate mass of the thalamus. So this tells you that the third ventricle is at the location or at the level of your diencephalon. It runs slam bang through the middle of the thalamus, really, which is why we need that space there for the intermediate mass. The cerebrospinal fluid then continues into this duct here we call the cerebral aqueduct. And that sits at the level of the midbrain and a little bit towards the superior portion of the pons. Once we get, however, to this structure right here, we get to the fourth ventricle, and that is at the level of the pons on the anterior side and the cerebellum on the posterior side. Your fourth ventricle has some openings, which we call apertures, which allow for the cerebrospinal fluid to go into the subarachnoid space around the brain. And your fourth ventricle also is continuous with the central canal of the spinal cord. So that's sort of an overview of the ventricles.